Buying comics from titles like this will help you weather the storm of volatile market conditions. Hey there. Today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to be opening up an order that I placed back in April from Mile High Comics. So this was from April 2022. This was right before they shifted their 60% off coupon to 50%. I have not ordered from them since they reduced the discount. I've talked about this in the past, so I won't really vent about it too much here, but with everyone sort of cutting back and being more mindful of where they're spending their money, I don't like it when maybe these non-staples or I would consider comic books to be sort of a luxury hobby, when the prices of that goes up. I'm just not a fan, and I end up kind of taking a break from those sorts of resources that I had relied on in the past that are not giving me a better discount and a better opportunity. So for now, Mile High Comics is not getting my money, but I still have a few orders left over, and I want to unbox this here and talk about the contents of the order and how it relates to market conditions, and certainly the market condition that we're experiencing now, which is some form of correction or decline of some kind. And the thing is, though, like I still believe that I call them comic book hype artists. They're folks that they're really looking at one particular slice of the market, and that slice is the books that they own, right? It's not really helping all of us. It's really just, I love this one artist and he or she is great and I have their books, and even though the market's down, these books are still great. They're books to buy, books to have. They're rare, hard to find. They're coming at us with an agenda, and the agenda ultimately is the rest of the market can slide, but my collection is still valuable, and you should also help me make it valuable. And what's interesting is that while this agenda continues to be pushed, collectors, savvy collectors like us, we can see through it. What I prefer to do is, just like you would with any sort of investment strategy, you want to have some fun, you want to assume some risk, you want to, have some long shots, not necessarily the long shot mini series by Art Adams, but possibly. But you want to have some books that could potentially have a higher ceiling, a greater opportunity for short term or long term to sort of gain a lot of value for whatever reason, scarcity, artist, character. You always want some of that fun into your collection. But the best comics really are the ones that are boring. They're the ones that we've all seen over and over and over. And there's a particular title that's not a surprise. It's probably one of the most well-known comic book titles, and that's Amazing Spider-Man from Marvel Comics. Whenever I go on to sites like Cover Price and I start researching data and I'm trying to find out what's going on, I'm taking the temperature of the market on a daily basis. Amazing Spider-Man, the title, is always, every single day, on their hot list. And I think there's been a streak. I don't know how many days consecutively there has been at least one book from Amazing Spider-Man, the original Amazing Spider-Man title from Marvel. It's been on there every day, it seems, at least one. And what I've noticed even more recently is that they'll have 5 to 10 books. Titles like Amazing Spider-Man, those are your bread and butter, really, really boring staples, must-haves for your collection. It's not that they're always going to have value, it's just they're more likely to be able to sustain value as people come in and out of the hobby, as auctions are ending lower prices than they were a month ago, a year ago. And I think that as we're starting to see prices not necessarily go back to the pre 2019 and 2020 prices or the pre pandemic, although people classify it as the pandemic era, but it's the comic book hype influencer era slash variant era. It's all of those things, however you want to describe it. But in terms of a timeline, the pre 2020 values, we're sort of seeing books at least lean more towards those values, with a great opportunity to purchase books via auction and other sources that maybe over the past couple of years just wasn't available to us, as folks have maybe come from other markets like cryptocurrency and sports cards. All it takes is a fewer people participating in an auction, and a book will plummet in price. So what these kind of hype artists will do is they'll say that this book that I own that should not have been worth several $100s in 2021 is now being auctioned for about $50, and you're all sleeping on it. Okay, well, I've barely heard of the character and barely heard of the title. And one of my theories that kind of goes along with relative affordability is, as the market is fluctuating, you want to find titles that have, fewer peaks and valleys. And when the market is screaming hot, those titles are really overlooked and they're kind of boring and they're just not that interesting because everyone's looking for the new book. But when the market's down, people will go back and they'll feel good, they'll feel comfortable. I find myself in times like these opening my comic book bins and just looking at my Amazing Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and X-Men collection, because there's some sense or feeling of comfort with those books. There's certainly nostalgia, a little bit of time travel taking me back to my childhood, but also as an investor in comic books, it just makes me feel good that that is a particular title that, while it has a chance to lose value like any collectible would, it is less likely to lose value. So in this order from Mile High Comics that I placed, I'm always trying to add a couple of books from these sort of titles that I would consider to be staples of anybody's collection. And if you're a DC fan, Batman, Detective Comics, other titles, like, they're just the books that everyone knows about, the artists that everyone knows about. As people come in and out of the hobby, those of us that remain and they're consistent, these are the books that are recognizable. The artists where we can identify just looking at a book. I know which artist that is. That's Perez. That's McFarlane. That's Jim Lee, right? We just see it. We know it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this and kind of show you some of the books that I got. And then also show you an example of a book that maybe falls in line with some of the more recent pushes for picking up artists. Because as the market continues to shift and there are fewer books just popping out of nowhere for these folks to kind of take credit for bringing awareness and everything, the latest trend over the last month or so has been taking artists that we know and finding maybe some and I'm doing this a lot in this video, I'd love to use air quotes, I guess, but they look for overlooked books, or maybe just essentially it's just early works from that artist. So I could talk about maybe how I found it and kind of show you what I mean. And then I'll look at the values for these. I'll show you what I paid for these books in an order summary review, where you can see what the fair market value is compared to what I paid, and then also what the value is for these books when they're professionally graded. So let's get to the unboxing. All right, here is this order from Mile High Comics, sent via FedEx. Once you kind of cross that threshold with Mile High Comics in terms of the total cost of your order, you're able to unlock free shipping. By default, it defaults to USPS. I always choose FedEx. I've always had good luck with shipping via FedEx from Mile High Comics, so I always choose that. It's a free option. So let me go ahead and get this out of the envelope and get to the comics. All right, let's see what we got. So this will be a majority of Amazing Spider-Man and a few other books. The first one is Amazing Spider-Man 266. This is written by Peter David, cover art by Dennis Cowan, and interior pencils by Sal Buscema. And like the cover states, it's Frogman, or This Man, This Frog, right? Very fun cover. And Frogman was all the rage when we saw the She-Hulk trailer, and yep, that's the character that everybody was specking on for a couple of days. That one right there, Frogman. This is all of these books, by the way, were purchased in near mint condition or mint. So I always try and focus on those. I end up paying a premium and paying extra for books in higher grade from Mile High, and then have that 60% off coupon. I noticed with this one, I'm not going to maybe take all of these out and grade them here today, but it's definitely miswrapped, which again could potentially hide some spine ticks pressed out. Down here, there's a little bit of a folding issue, kind of like a reverse finger bend or something down there. It's not color breaking though, as you can see, so that could be blasted with humidity and maybe pressed out. So all in all, a pretty good book in terms of condition. And again, just not a key, certainly not, especially with Frogman. But you never know how people react, and they want to go back and maybe there'll be like a top 10 list of best Frogman covers, and this one will be on it. And then it'll probably double in value or something crazy. The next one is Amazing Spider-Man 258. Now, this was the most expensive book in the order. I love this cover. And in the story, this is I don't know if it's the origin of the black costume being an alien symbiote, but it is discovered by Reed Richards that it is. And I love the dual personality aspect. You could see the pain on Peter's face as he's struggling. We know that Peter Parker's always struggled with the Spider-Man identity, and he's accepted it, embraced it, but rejected it as well. And now you have this second costume entity, so to speak, that is wrestling for his undivided attention. And it's wrapped around the body, the background with that black and white swirling. It just gives a sort of vertigo, alien, nightmarish sort of cover. I love this. I have this book in a 9.6. I'd love to get it in a 9.8. So I'll definitely look at this one. Again, in the bag, it looks to be okay. Just maybe a slight spine creasing up and down there, but for the most part, a very, very strong copy. So love adding this book and picking it up anywhere I can. Here's one, a more recent release, although I think this was a 2014, 2015. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 5. Now, I picked this one up because this is the second appearance of Silk, and it is, I guess, designated as her first full cover appearance. Black Cat is, she definitely has like a surprised look on her face. Maybe she's surprised that Silk's behind her. It is, I guess, a full appearance, even though part of her arm and her leg is being blocked by Black Cat. But this particular book is the second appearance and the first full cover of Silk. So Silk was sort of hinted at in these first few issues or handful of issues of Amazing Spider-Man from 2014. It's not the greatest full cover appearance, but there it is. And you never know just how people fall in love with comics, or if Silk does appear on the big or small screen, people are going to go through that checklist. First appearance, maybe the first appearance of Cindy Moon, first appearance of Cindy Moon as Silk, origin, first solo, and in that checklist of what collectors really go for is first cover. So that is her first full cover appearance. Okay, we always got a little bit of a Midtown special. There's no backing board on this one. This is Amazing Spider-Man 274. Again, not a key. Written by Tom DeFalco. There several pencilers did the interiors here. John Romita on cover art. So a combo of Romita and Larry Lieber. And this is a Secret Wars 2 tie-in. Very classic Spider-Man character heads there on the cover. And again, always, poor Spider-Man is always going through something. But released in 1985, so great Copper Age goodness right there after the Bronze Age had ended. And these I find, they're easy to find, relatively affordable, and staples of my collection. Next is Amazing Spider-Man 329. This is the first appearance of the Tri-Sentinel. So the Sentinels coming from the X-Men lore. It's the first appearance of the Tri-Sentinel, and Spidey's getting crushed under his foot. I've purchased this one in the past. I really like this one. Cover art by Eric Larson, written by David Michelini. I can tell through the bag, it does have some color-breaking spine ticks right there by Larson's signature. And this is right after McFarlane left the book. So I'm trying to complete a full run of McFarlane Amazing Spider-Man, and then Larson takes over right after that before Bagley does. So maybe Larson will be kind of the next run of ASM that I decide to complete. And I'm going to jump around. We'll just go ahead and finish Amazing Spider-Man, and 2 more books to go. This is Amazing Spider-Man 406. I have picked this book up in previous orders. What I end up doing is if I find a book that has really good value, especially if it's graded in a 9.8, I'll end up kind of buying one at a time. I think that Mile High Comics recently has put a limit on the number of books that you can order, limiting you to one. I don't know if I can't really confirm that. I haven't ordered from them recently, but I do believe that that is the case. But I would still go back and just order one copy. And I don't know. It was just like, well, if they still have it in stock and the book still has value, okay, fine, I'll order one more. And this was the last one. I think I have 3 or 4 copies of this. Not a huge spec book necessarily, but it is the first full appearance of Lady Octopus. This is written by J.M. DeMatteis with art by Bagley. So once Larson finished, Bagley sort of took over, and he went on a crazy, consistent streak of Amazing Spider-Man books and covers. So this is one of those examples of it's a character first appearance and pretty decent value, but we'll certainly compare the cost of this book and the others to the current fair market value here in a moment. All right, I don't want to spoil the last one. Not that it's a huge book, but just to stay focused on Nova #1. This is the first solo titled series featuring Sam Alexander Nova. Kevin Feige has confirmed that there is a Nova project on the horizon. It's going to feature Sam Alexander, kind of like what I was talking about with Silk. There's this checklist of certain things, and this is the item on that list, which is the character's first solo series. Okay, the last one in the order, it wasn't necessarily an experiment, but this is Red Sonja #10. And the cover for this is the standard cover A, not a variant, not an incentive, but it's Jenny Frison. So the thinking here is you love a certain artist from today, but you don't realize necessarily that they've been working on comics for, almost 10 years now. And Frison is one of those artists that a lot of people love. They're kind of in their top 5 or top 10 current modern artists. She does a lot of covers. I think she just wrapped a pretty significant run of covers for Catwoman. She did a lot of great covers for Something Is Killing the Children, and on and on. What speculators will do is they will bring awareness, and they will talk about artists and go back and just say, this is a ghost, this is hard to find, this is super rare. None of that's true. There's lots of databases you can use that you can just query by cover artists and then sort the results by, the most recently released book or oldest book. Look at where the artist is credited, and sometimes even the stores like Midtown, Westfield Comics, they will have searches on there where you can search for specific cover artists. I would recommend that if you are a fan of these artists, probably if you are already, you know that Frison did Red Sonja covers. So she did. She had a great cover run here. This was the only one, though, I could find on Mile High Comics. So that's why I kind of threw it into the order here. But just use the internet, use searches. If you're aware of the artists, like I said, you probably know of the books that they've done. And if you're new to a particular artist and you're like, oh, I actually do enjoy a great Jenny Frison cover, then, like I said, it is worth it to go back and run a search against some of those artists and find some books, and not to list specific artists that you might want to check out, but make yourself a short list of those artists that are putting out books today where the cover art alone is making the book desirable. Look for particular cover artists that have incentives, and then just go back 4, 5, 10 years even, and you can find some of their earlier work. A lot of them started at Dynamite. All right, so that was the order of comics. Now let's see what I paid for these, compare them to fair market value, and also look at their value after they've been professionally graded by. Okay, here is the order I placed with Mile High Comics back on April 9th, 2022. I paid $153.80 for that stack of books. So there was a $5 insurance charge for the order, and I distributed that additional $5 across the 8 books. So the total cost of the book, I like to include any sort of shipping, insurance, tax, to try and store my total amount that I paid to acquire that specific book. So down here, if the total is $153.80 matches my invoice total, then I know my math is correct. So from a fair market value to cost perspective, this was a complete loss of $55.29. And what that means is, if I were to take these 8 books and list them all on your favorite selling platform, I could look to only gain so much back here using cover price and their fair market value, and comparing that against the total cost to see essentially whether or not I was in a positive or negative space in terms of just the raw book's fair market value. Now, I will say with Mile High Comics, I do not expect to have a massive positive value increase when I order from them, because I do know that they are overpriced, and even with that coupon, you're typically paying over fair market value. However, we don't know the grades that are associated really with fair market value. And you'd argue that books right between the Bronze and Copper Age, or at the start of the Copper Age, maybe fair market value is really associated with maybe an 8.0. Then if you're kind of inflating the fair market value a bit to reach near mint, then you can kind of see why I justify the additional cost. Now, the biggest loser here was that Amazing Spider-Man 258 that I love. So part of it is I love the book. Do I love it a little bit too much? Apparently, I paid $45.83 to acquire that book. And so with it having a fair market value of $17.33 raw, I lost $28.50 on that book. Again, I don't necessarily know what the fair market value represents because it's across all grades, but that's why I can stomach the additional cost just a little bit more. It still stings a little bit. I'd love it to be more closely aligned with fair market value, but it is what it is to get the book in as high grade as possible, sight unseen. Here's another one I lost, $266. I lost $6, $4 and change on the other 3 ASM books here. Another significant loser is the Nova #1 book, a loss of $10.44 of fair market value. Now, that one being a 2013 release, fair market value is probably a 9.4 on that one, along with the ASM #5 and the Red Sonja #10. So I have to be a little bit careful there, but I just figured Nova #1. What ended up happening is I probably bought it around the time we got some additional Nova news. I snatched up an additional copy. Then there hasn't really been any news since. We could get news here at San Diego Comic-Con this year, but we'll see. But again, a loss of $10.44. There was one positive book, and it was that Red Sonja Jenny Frison cover. I paid $16.63 for that book, and it has a fair market value currently of $21.66. And I believe that is being driven by influencers that continue to push artists and claiming that their earlier works are rare, hard to find, super scarce, ghosts, and so forth. And I'm just kind of dabbling a little bit in that, where I'll kind of do my own research and try and find the books before they show up on their social media platforms, and that way I'm benefiting from all of that free PR that they're giving the books. Now, what I like to do is go ahead and plug in some fake grades here. So in this case, let's give them all 9.4s, right? Because near mint is 9.4. I ordered near mint books from Mile High. I'm sure they're in 9.4s. Of course, that's not the case. Mile High uses a range of grades, and near mint could be anywhere from an 8.0 to a 9.8. And that's just kind of what they do. But even in a 9.4, some of these books have pretty nice value. So if I were to send them all to CGC, all of the books that had a greater than zero value, then the order becomes a bit more positive. It's not like, I basically, for my trouble, roughly getting my money back, making about $26.25, but it at least ensures me that it's not a total loss, where I could at least get my money back for what I paid, with the chance that potentially these books could grade up beyond a 9.4. But it's nice to know that at least a 9.4. And this is when I'm doing my daily value picks, or I'm doing my retrospectives on the best value picks and kind of where that book stands in terms of value. The 9.4, the CGC 9.4, is a super strong weighted variable in my formula, because of this reason. This is a great example, right? I'm purchasing these, and even though I'm overpaying in terms of fair market value, I'm reducing my risk, because I feel like if I'm buying from near mint and the average grade of a book that I get from somebody like Mile High is 9.4, then I feel like even in a break-even situation, it's worth the gamble to try and find a couple of these books in a 9.8. Now, let's see if all of these were 9.8. What is the ceiling on all of these books here? This is always fun. I don't believe all of these books are 9.8, but we can certainly just see what would happen if they were. And all of these books in this order, just 8 comic books, has a CGC 9.8 value of over $1,200. And this is really being driven by 2 books, and it's kind of surprising. Now, 258 I knew had value. It's $341 in a 9.8. And I'm sitting here staring at my 9.6 on the wall, thinking, man, maybe the one I just got is an upgrade. We'll see when I grade it out. But $341. The one just above it, though, Red Sonja number 10, GPA reported 9.8 value, $300. That's crazy. But again, it's because of those artist hunters that are looking for early works of their favorite artists and trying to, maybe their entire collection is just Jenny Frison books. That's why that value is so high, and that's why influencers and hype artists are really pushing these, because there is some kind of sneaky hidden value. I don't know the story inside Red Sonja 10, and I don't really need to, because the focus really is on Frison's cover art. A couple other books over $200, both of those Amazing Spider-Man, $329, $406, $200. I don't really believe that. If I got the book in a 9.8 and sent it in for grading, I'd probably go ahead and sell that one. I don't believe that Lady Octopus is really going to be a thing anytime soon, but nevertheless, that's the value. A couple other ones here, the Nova number 1 at 180, and the ASM First Silk on the cover at 178. Now, I don't believe that these are all 9.8s. They're probably closer to 9.4. But at any rate, those were the values, and I really do strongly believe that you can maybe go out and reach for a book like Red Sonja 10, Nova number 1, and go ahead and buy those. And then as you're kind of adding, and those aren't necessarily riskier books, but you may be paying a little bit of a premium. I mean, if I'm looking at it, I paid, almost $25 for Nova number 1, but then I went ahead and paid $12.63 for a couple of those ASM books. So would you rather have Nova number 1, Sam's first solo series, or a couple of those ASMs, right? Would you make that trade? It kind of depends. Are you into modern books? Are you into sort of the MCU Disney Plus character speculation? I kind of dabble in both, so I don't necessarily have to make that choice. But what I try and do is I try not to lean too heavily in one direction, right? Kind of investment advice 101 is diversification. And this order is a really great example of a diversified order, where I'm looking at you could argue that ASM 258 is a minor key. I think it has a lot going on. The story, the cover, the black suit versus the red suit, it being an ASM title, again, right at the beginning, Copper Age. There's a lot happening for that book that I think would kind of make it sort of the cornerstone of this order. And that's probably borderline solid, cheap investment, and maybe something that I'm willing to pay a little bit more to acquire because I do feel like it has better long-term value than the other books. And then some other non-key minor issues within a title that should be a staple of any comic book collector slash investor's collection. So I'm just kind of gobbling up those books, trying to find books in higher grade under the umbrella of that title. And really, it's around as time goes on and the Amazing Spider-Man keys continue to rise in value, the non-keys around it will also still be driven up in terms of desirability, collectability, because they're near or around those keys. And also, I think you'll start to stumble on other storylines, like the fact that Reed Richards finds out that the black suit is actually a symbiote, it's an alien costume. Sometimes those storylines play out in live action or they're hinted at, and then I think that, that book could have long-term value. And then along with sort of those bread and butter staple type purchases, you can afford to maybe take a couple of risks. I'm doing a little artist speculation. I'm doing a little MCU Disney Plus character speculation. And I kind of put all that together in a nice sort of investment package where I'm dabbling in a few different things, but just trying to diversify my comic book purchase, my comic book investment, and trying to be clever and creative as we all kind of move ahead and navigate the comic book market. Thank you for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.